The jungle that rewrote the blueprint. Nothing here followed straight lines. Vines pulled steel out of alignment. Roots cracked stone overnight. Rain fell in sudden sheets, turning soil into movement. And in this living, breathing jungle, a hotel was planned exactly the way it would have been anywhere else, until the jungle refused to cooperate. The site sat deep within a tropical rainforest where growth never paused. Every hour brought change. Leaves shifted, ground softened, trees expanded, contracted, and migrated through slow pressure. It was beautiful, overwhelming, and utterly incompatible with conventional construction. At first, the plans were confident. Elevated structures to avoid flooding, reinforced foundations to resist roots, clearings cut for access and symmetry. The blueprint assumed the jungle could be managed, trimmed back, redirected, contained. It couldn't. Within weeks, the forest answered. Cleared paths vanished under new growth. Moisture seeped into seal materials. Insects nested inside conduits thought to be airtight. Even sunlight shifted unpredictably as the canopy rearranged itself overhead. The jungle was not hostile. It was indifferent. To understand why this hotel matters today, we have to return to the moment that indifference became undeniable. After a night of heavy rain, survey markers had moved, not washed away, pushed. Roots had grown beneath them with quiet force, altering measurements the team relied on for alignment. The ground itself had rewritten the map. Engineers recalculated, designers adjusted, and still, the jungle kept moving. Traditional foundations cracked under uneven pressure. Drainage systems clogged faster than they could be cleared. Steel supports corroded in the humid air despite every protective coating. The forest treated permanence as a temporary suggestion. The first real crisis came when a partially completed structure tilted overnight. No storm, no collapse, just growth. A massive root system beneath the site had expanded, lifting one side of the foundation and fracturing the slab. The jungle had made its position clear. This would not be a battle of strength. It would be a negotiation. And as the team stood among vines reclaiming their work, they faced a truth that changed everything. If they wanted to build here, they would have to stop imposing order and start learning the jungle's logic. Once the jungle's logic became impossible to ignore, the project entered its most humbling phase. Every assumption carried into the rainforest began to unravel. The team realized they were not building on land that waited patiently for design decisions. They were building inside a system that never paused, never reset, never cared about intention. The first shift came with the foundations. Digging deeper only exposed more problems. Roots rerouted around barriers, thickening with time. Soil behaved like a living sponge, swelling and shrinking with each rainfall. Heavy foundations sank unevenly, while lighter ones drifted. The ground did not reward force. It punished it. Engineers began studying how the jungle itself supported weight. Massive trees stood tall not because they drilled deep, but because they spread wide. Their roots braided together, sharing load, distributing stress, yielding without breaking. Strength here came from flexibility and cooperation. Inspired by this, the hotel's foundations were reimagined. Instead of deep pilings, wide lattice bases were introduced, resting lightly atop the soil and allowing roots to pass through them. The building would no longer block growth. It would coexist with it. But this decision triggered new conflict. Allowing roots to pass through meant surrendering precision. Floor levels could no longer be perfectly flat. Columns could not be perfectly vertical. Over time, the building would shift subtly as the forest grew. For designers trained in control, this felt like failure. And then came the insects. Termites ignored chemical barriers. Ants invaded cable channels. Beetles nested inside insulation. Every sealed surface became an invitation. Attempts to exclude life only seemed to attract more of it. The jungle did not recognize boundaries, only opportunity. The breakthrough arrived when the team stopped trying to keep the forest out and began designing spaces for it. Ventilation channels were opened and lined with materials insects avoided naturally. Electrical systems were rerouted through exposed, easily inspectable paths. Surfaces were chosen not for permanence, but for their ability to age gracefully. Still, doubt lingered. Could guests accept a hotel that creaked with growth? that changed shape over time, that shared its space with the living jungle instead of sealing it away? The question sharpened as construction advanced. Rain intensified. Growth accelerated. The jungle pressed closer each day, testing whether the new philosophy was enough. And beneath the canopy, surrounded by movement and sound, the team sensed the project approaching a turning point. They were no longer fighting collapse. They were deciding what kind of relationship this hotel would have with a place that never stopped becoming something new. The relationship was tested the night the jungle reminded them who truly set the pace. A monsoon arrived without warning, dropping rain in sheets so dense the forest seemed to dissolve into motion. Water raced across the soil, roots drank deeply, and the air thickened with sound. When morning came, the site looked unchanged at first glance, until measurements began. Several structures had shifted overnight, not collapsed, not damaged, simply repositioned. A column leaned a fraction of a degree. A walkway curved where it had once been straight. The jungle had adjusted the hotel the way it adjusted everything else. For the team, this was the emotional breaking point. Engineers argued the movement exceeded acceptable tolerances. Designers worried the hotel would never feel finished. Investors questioned whether guests would tolerate a place that refused to stay the same. The fear was no longer technical. It was existential. Were they building something enduring or something endlessly unfinished? The jungle offered no answer. It only continued growing. The conflict reached its peak when a senior architect proposed the unthinkable. Stop correcting the shifts entirely. Let the building move. Let it settle into whatever form the jungle allowed. This wasn't surrender. It was alignment. The hotel would no longer chase a final shape. It would exist in a state of continuous becoming. Silence followed the proposal. Accepting it meant redefining success. No fixed geometry. No permanent symmetry. Maintenance would focus on safety and comfort, not visual perfection. The hotel would age like a living organism, shaped by rain, roots, and time. The team resisted, until a structural analysis revealed something unexpected. The areas they had stopped correcting were under less stress. Loads distributed more evenly. Materials aged more slowly. The jungle rewarded flexibility with stability. That realization changed everything. Designs were finalized not as drawings, but as ranges. Columns allowed controlled drift. Walkways flexed. Rooms were built with modular joints that accepted slow movement without cracking. The hotel was no longer resisting change. It was absorbing it. Emotionally, the shift was profound. What once felt like loss began to feel like relief. The pressure to dominate the environment faded. In its place grew respect. Yet, one final question remained. Would guests feel peace in a place that never stopped changing? The answer would come not from data, but from lived experience. When the first visitors stepped into a hotel shaped not by blueprints, but by the jungle itself, when the first guests arrived, they didn't notice the movement at all. What they noticed was the air, thick with life, layered with sound, alive in a way no sealed building could ever replicate. The hotel felt less like a structure and more like a clearing that had learned how to host people. As days passed, guests began to sense the subtle changes. A walkway that curved gently beneath their feet. A room that framed the forest slightly differently at sunrise than it had the night before. These shifts didn't unsettle them. They fascinated them. The jungle's presence felt intimate rather than intrusive. The true climax came during a powerful monsoon that swept through the rainforest weeks after opening. Rain hammered the canopy. Roots drank deeply. The hotel responded exactly as it had been designed to. By yielding, walkways flexed. Columns adjusted. Water flowed through channels meant to welcome it rather than trap it. Inside, guests watched the storm with awe, not fear. The building creaked softly, not as a warning, but as a language, the sound of wood, earth, and rain negotiating space together. When the storm passed, inspections revealed something remarkable. Structures that had been allowed to move suffered less damage than those that had been corrected too rigidly. The jungle had tested the hotel and accepted it. In the months that followed, the hotel gained a reputation not for luxury alone, but for presence. Visitors described feeling grounded, connected, humbled. They spoke of learning patience by staying in a place that refused to be frozen in time. The jungle did not rewrite the blueprint once. It rewrote it every day. And that is a legacy of the hotel the jungle reshaped. A reminder that control is not the same as strength, that adaptability can be more durable than rigidity, and that when we build with living systems instead of against them, we create spaces that don't just survive, they belong. Subscribe to join the journey. The